Okay, so you've handed us this fantastic collection of sources,
Uh-huh.
articles, research notes, all about French wine. Wow, it really feels like a deep dive waiting to happen.
It really is. You look at this material and it maps out, well, centuries of history, doesn't it? France is, I mean, undeniably the historic heart of wine.
Absolutely. And these sources show not just that past influence, but, a really dynamic present too.
Exactly. We're talking about a journey through so many different regions, different grapes,
Yeah.
each with its own story.
And that's our goal here, right? To kind of sift through all this detail and pull out the really important stuff, the stories, the key facts, the things that help you feel well informed about it all.
Without having to read every single page yourself.
Precisely. We want to explore what makes these places and their wines, well, pick.
And you see France's influence just are everywhere in the wine world, don't you? So many of the major grape varieties people grow globally. They started in France. And that core idea, terroir, that the place itself, the soil, the climate, the whole environment is fundamental to the wine. That's a French concept that basically shaped modern winemaking.
It's pretty striking when you see those visuals, mapping French vineyards onto the world. You really grasp how many global vines have French roots. It's a huge legacy.
And that diversity within France itself, like you said, is all down to terroir. It's not just soil and weather. It's the slope of the land, the altitude.
Local traditions, too.
Local traditions, absolutely. All those elements combine to give a wine its specific character, its sense of place.
Okay, so let's actually get into it. Let's tour some of these key regions. The sources give us a great starting point, covering some real giants. Where do you think we should begin?
Well, you almost have to start with Bordeaux and Burgundy, don't you? They're foundational. Let's kick off with Bordeaux.
Bordeaux. Okay, yeah. Immediately makes you think of those complex red blends and maybe that famous 1855 classification.
Exactly. The 1855 classification is, well, it's a major historical landmark. It was basically a ranking of Medoc estates, +1 from Graves, for the Paris Exposition back then.
Based on price and reputation at the time.
Right, and it gave us the first growth, second growths, all that. But, it's crucial to remember it was a snapshot in time. It hasn't really been updated comprehensively, so while it's historically significant, it definitely doesn't tell the whole quality story today.
Right, context is everything. And Bordeaux is famously split, isn't it? The left bank and the right bank of the Gironde estuary.
That's a key distinction, yeah.
Yeah.
On the left bank, you've mostly got gravel soils, really deep gravel beds.
That's good.
Perfect for Cabernet Sauvignon. It thrives there, gives you wines with real power, structure, and that amazing ability to age for decades. Think of places like Pauillac, home to icons like Lafite Rothschild, Latour?
Legends.
Absolutely. And then further north, Saint-Estèphe also makes powerful, long-lived wines. It has a bit more clay in the soil, though, which means Merlot often plays a slightly bigger role in the blend, adding a bit of richness.
So left bank really leans on Cabernet Sauvignon for that backbone.
Yeah, Cabernet Sauvignon is the spine, definitely.
Yep.
Then over on the right bank, our sources don't go super deep into specific communes beyond Merlot's importance, but generally, Merlot is the lid grape there.
Okay.
It brings more softness, that fleshy, plummy fruit character that makes the wines maybe a bit more approachable, younger. Cabernet Franc is also key, adding aromatic complexity, and you'll find bits of Petit Verdot and Malbec sometimes too.
And aging in French oak seems pretty standard for the style.
Oh, absolutely integral. It's not just tradition. That time in French oak barrels adds layers of complexity. Vanilla, cedar, baking spice notes, and it really helps to soften and integrate those tannins. It's essential for their structure and longevity.
What about white Bordeaux? We tend to focus so much on the reds.
And that's a shame because dry white Bordeaux can be fantastic. Maybe less famous globally, but really high quality. Key areas are Pessac-Léognan, south of the city, and the huge Entre-deux-Mers region.
And what grapes are we talking about?
Primarily Sauvignon Blanc. It gives these wines lovely, vibrant acidity, notes of grapefruit, gooseberry, maybe some grassy or herbaceous hints. Depending on the specific spot, you might get tropical notes or a real distinct minerality.
Okay, so from the blends of Bordeaux,
Mhm.
let's jump east. Burgundy. Feels like a totally different world. stylistically.
It absolutely is. Burgundy is all about expressing terroir through typically single grape varieties. It's about finesse, nuance. Pinot Noir here is famously sensitive.
Right.
Tiny differences in vineyard plots, even just meters apart, can result in noticeably different wines. You get these delicate red fruit notes, floral hints, complex, earthy, mushroomy undertones.
And for the whites, Chardonnay is queen.
Chardonnay is definitely the star white grape. The Côte de Beaune is home to some of the most revered and expensive white wines in the world. And then you've got Chablis, way up north.
Ah, yes, Chablis, that unique soil.
Kimmeridgian soil, ancient seabed, packed with fossilized oyster shells. It's not just marketing speak, it genuinely gives Chablis that signature bracing acidity and intense minerality, like flint or oyster shells or sea air. It's unmistakable.
Now, you mentioned earlier, or rather the sources did, a white grape making a comeback. Aligoté.
Yes, Aligoté. It's got such an interesting story. Believe it or not, back in the 19th century, it was the most planted white grape in Burgundy.
Well, really?
Yeah, known for being crisp, sharp, refreshing. But then Chardonnay's global fame just exploded, and Aligoté got pushed to less favorable sites, often just making simple, quaffing wine. But now, there's a real renaissance happening. Certain producers are treating it with serious respect, careful farming, sometimes aging on lees, maybe a touch of oak. And they're proving it can make genuinely complex, mineral-driven wines with fantastic acidity. It's a cool example of, rediscovering tradition.
Sounds like a region with a very strong sense of itself. The sources mentioned the BIVB. What's their role?
The BIVB. That's the Bureau Interprofessionnel de Vin de Bourgogne, basically the regional wine board. They do a lot promoting Burgundy worldwide, setting quality rules, funding research, advocating for the growers. They're pretty vital for the region's continued success.
Okay, heading just south from Burgundy, we land in Beaujolais, the kingdom of Gamay.
Beaujolais is Gamay's heartland, absolutely. And fun fact, Gamay is actually a natural cross between Pinot Noir and an old white grape called Gouais Blanc.
Huh, interesting.
And the terroir varies here too. In the north, where the 10 Crus are, you've got granite soils. That tends to give more structured mineral wines. Down south, it's more clay and limestone, leading to wines with maybe more elegance and floral aromas. The climate's continental, generally making fruity wines with pretty smooth tannins.
And Gamay itself, it sounds like quite a charming grape.
Oh, it really is. It ripens quite early, keeps good acidity naturally, and has lower tannins than many reds. You get those lovely bright red fruit flavors, cherry, raspberry, sometimes strawberry, or even banana notes in Nouveau.
Ah, Beaujolais Nouveau. That gets a lot of press.
It does. That super young, light, fruity wine released in November, meant to be drunk chilled. But honestly, the real soul of Beaujolais lies in the 10 Cru. Each one offers a distinct expression of Gamay from its specific village terroir.
Like,
Well, Morgan, for example, is known for being more structured, complex, age-worthy. Fleury tends to be more floral and, well, pretty. Curubles is often lighter, very elegant. They're all Gamay, but they show different facets.
are they facing challenges, like other regions? Climate change, maybe?
Yes, definitely. Like many places, warmer temperatures are an issue. It can mean grapes ripen too early, potentially losing some of that crucial acidity and freshness that Beaujolais is known for.
So what's the strategy?
Well, they're really focusing on highlighting the diversity of the Cru, pushing sustainable vineyard practices, and boosting wine tourism to showcase everything the region offers beyond just Nouveau.
Okay, let's shift gears and head west now to the Loire Valley. That's a huge stretch of river, incredible diversity there.
It truly is. The Loire is like a tapestry of wine styles. You get everything from bone-dry, steely whites to lusciously sweet dessert wines, light, crisp reds, rosés, fantastic sparkling wines. It's driven by the changing climate along the river, different soils, microclimates.
And a real mix of grapes. Chenin Blanc and Sauvignon Blanc seem like the big white stars.
They definitely are. Chenin Blanc is incredibly versatile, seriously. It can make world-class wines that are bone-dry and mineral or rich and honeyed like in Vouvray or Coteau de Leon and everything in between. The aroma profile is huge.
And Sauvignon Blanc.
Sauvignon Blanc is key for those super vibrant aromatic whites. Think Sancerre, Parfumé, famous for their sort of gunflint minerality, gooseberry, citrus notes. Touraine also makes excellent Sauvignon Blanc, often great value. That herbaceous, refreshing quality is classic.
And for the reds in the Loire.
Cabernet Franc is the main player, especially around Chinon, Bourgogne, and somewhere Champigny. It makes really elegant, aromatic reds, usually not heavy, more about red fruit like raspberry and currant, sometimes pencil shavings or leafy notes with fine tannins.
And sustainability is becoming bigger there too.
Yeah, the Loire is really seeing a significant move towards organic and biodynamic farming. Lots of producers are embracing those practices.
Right. Let's journey south now, towards the Rhône Valley. We hear about North and South Rhône, but the sources seem to focus mostly on the south.
That's where we'll focus too then. The Southern Rhône is really famous for its blends, especially that classic GSM blend.
Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre.
Exactly. Grenache usually brings the warmth, the alcohol, the red fruit. Syrah adds structure, darker fruit, spice. Mourvèdre gives tannin, color, and savory, sometimes gamey notes, especially with age.
And the most iconic appellation there has to be Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
Without a doubt. Châteauneuf is known for these complex, often quite powerful, opulent red wines that can age incredibly well. One really unique feature is the galites, those big, rounded stones covering many vineyards.
Right, I've seen pictures.
They absorb the sun's heat during the day and radiate it back at night. Helps ripen the grapes fully, especially Grenache, contributing to that richness and power. But there are other great crus nearby too, like Gigondas and Vaqueras, often making similar powerful blends.
And they do make whites, too.
They do, though less common. The sources mention Viogno, which is super aromatic. Think apricots, peaches, floral notes like violet, and also Marsanne and Roussanne, often blended together for richer, textured whites.
Okay, shifting directions again east, towards the German border, Alsace.
Alsace is fascinatingly different from other French regions, partly because of its history, but also its strong focus on single varietal wines, often aromatic whites. And its climate is unique, too.
How so?
It's tucked in the rain shadow of the Vosges Mountains, so it's actually one of the driest, sunniest regions in France. But crucially, it has a big diurnal range, warm days, cool nights. That temperature swing is key for developing flavor while keeping acidity, and the soils are incredibly diverse, a real geological patchwork.
So which grapes really define Alsace?
Well, there are several noble grapes. Riesling is huge, typically bone dry here, unlike many German Rieslings with piercing acidity, citrus, mineral notes, and it can develop this intriguing petrol character with age. Then there's Gewürztraminer, intensely aromatic, like lychee, rose petals, ginger, spice. Pinot Gris makes richer, sometimes slightly off-dry wines with pear, apple, smoky notes. Muscat is usually very fragrant, grapey, floral. Pinot Blanc and Auxerrois are important too, often making lighter, fruitier styles.
And the villages there sound incredibly picturesque.
Oh, the sources make them sound straight out of a storybook. Places like Rickeweir, Eguisheim, Colmar,
Yeah.
with those colorful half-timbered houses, geraniums everywhere, vineyards right up to the edge of town. The Alsace wine route sounds like a must-do.
Definitely adding it to the list. Okay, down to the sunny Mediterranean coast for Provence, automatically, you think?
Rosé.
Exactly.
Provence really is the global benchmark for that pale, dry, crisp style of rosé. It's become hugely popular, and the climate helps, particularly the Mistral wind.
The wind.
Yeah, this strong, dry wind blows down from the north. It helps keep the vineyards dry, reduces disease pressure, which is really important in a warm, sunny place, helps maintain freshness in the grapes.
But they must make more than just rosé, right?
Oh, absolutely. They produce some excellent white wines, often based on a roll, which is the same grape as Vermentino in Italy. Usually citrusy, sometimes herbal, with good minerality and acidity.
Okay.
And they make reds, too, often using Syrah, Mourvèdre, Grenache, Cabernet Sauvignon. These can be quite structured, spicy, dark-fruited wines, especially from appellations like Bordeaux. Provence also has a really long winemaking history, going back to the ancient Greeks, later influenced by monasteries. So they're balancing that deep tradition with modern innovation.
Yeah, a region that feels maybe a bit less familiar, but the sources highlight its historical importance. Southwest France, the Sud-Ouest.
It's a region with a really deep past, yeah. The Romans were planting vines there over 2,000 years ago. It's incredibly diverse. Geographically, you've got influence from the Atlantic, inland continental areas, the Pyrenees Mountains.
And lots of different grapes.
A huge variety. International grapes, sure, but also a real treasure trove of unique indigenous varieties that you don't find much elsewhere. It's quite exciting.
Like Tannat. I feel like I've heard of that one.
Tannat is the signature grape of Madaran in the heart of the Southwest. It makes seriously robust, deeply colored red wines, known for its really high tannin levels.
Yeah, so it needs aging.
Definitely. Young Tannat can be quite formidable, but with age, often several years in barrel and bottle, those tannins soften, and the wine develops amazing complexity. Leather, tobacco, dark chocolate, earthy notes alongside the black fruit. Malbec, which they often call Côte there, is the star in Cahors, making powerful dark reds. And for whites, Jurançon is famous for wines made from Petit Manseng, and a Gros Manseng can be dry or intensely sweet and aromatic.
Sounds like a region with a lot going on, maybe some challenges, but definite potential.
That's the picture the sources paint. There's a real focus on quality, on championing those unique native grapes, and also on developing enotourism. They mention things like visiting Cahors, exploring the vineyards, even walking parts of the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage route that passes through.
Okay, next up, the Jura. This sounds really distinct. Sauvignon grape, vin jaune.
The Jura is utterly unique. It's a small region, kind of nestled between Burgundy and Switzerland. Semi-mountainous, continental climate, so a cool growing season, slow ripening, which really helps the key white grape, Sauvignon, keep its high acidity.
And vin jaune, yellow wine.
Right, that's the region's most famous and unusual wine style. It's made from Sauvignon, and it has to be aged for a minimum of 6 years and 3 months in oak barrels. But here's the thing. The barrels aren't topped up.
So it oxidizes.
Well, not exactly. A layer of yeast, called the voile or veil, forms on the surface of the wine, protecting it from excessive oxidation, kind of like flor in sherry, but it's a different yeast strain. This voile maturation imparts these incredibly complex, nutty, spicy, almost curried aromas alongside dried fruit notes. It's savory, intense, and remarkably long-lived, and interestingly, often made without adding sulfites.
Wow, that sounds like something you have to taste to understand. How about Savoie, right nearby in the Alps?
Savoie is pure alpine territory. Cool climate, steep slopes, mineral-rich soils derived from limestone and glacial deposits. It produces wines that are typically light, crisp, vibrant, and refreshing.
From local grapes, mostly.
Yeah, lots of fascinating indigenous varieties like Jacquer, which makes light floral, slightly stony whites. Altesse gives richer, more complex whites. Mondouse is the key red grape, making bright, peppery, berry-fruited wines. They do grow Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, too. You also find light reds made with short maceration and some excellent traditional method sparkling wines, often called Crémant de Savoie.
Okay, let's sweep down south again to Languedoc-Roussillon. That's a massive area.
It stretches pretty much all the way across the south of France along the Mediterranean coast. Very sunny, warm climate, and again, a really ancient winemaking history.
And diverse.
Incredibly diverse terroir, from coastal plains to hillside slopes. Lots of different grapes grown, but it's particularly strong for red blends, often based on Syrah, Grenache, Mourvèdre, and also Carignan, an old workhorse grape that, when handled well from old vines, can make fantastic wines. They produce structured reds with real aging potential, and it's a region known for a lot of ongoing research and innovation, too.
And finally, this was a bit of a surprise from the sources, Paris. Wine in Paris.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? It's a detail you don't often hear about. There are actually small vineyards cultivated right within the city limits, like the famous one in Montmartre.
Huh.
It's a unique kind of urban viticulture, a connection back to the city's agricultural past. The sources called it one of Paris's best-kept secrets, producing wines that reflect this very unusual urban terroir.
What an incredible journey through the sheer variety of French wine regions. Now, beyond just the places and grapes, the sources also touched on winemaking practices and the sort of culture around French wine.
They did. Things like controlling fermentation temperatures really important for preserving delicate aromas, especially in whites and lighter reds. Aging in oak, particularly French oak, we mentioned for Bordeaux, but it's used elsewhere too, for adding structure, texture, and those spice or vanilla notes.
And aging on lees.
Right. Aging on the spent yeast cells after fermentation. That adds richness, body, and complexity, particularly common for white wines like Muscadet from the Loire or some Chardonnays.
And we heard about some really specific, unique techniques, too.
We did. Cryomaceration, or cold soak, macerating the grapes at low temperatures before fermentation starts. That can help extract color and aromatic compounds gently without getting harsh tannins. Useful for grapes like Pinot Noir. And then, of course, the voiles aging for vin jaune and the Jura. That's probably the most singular technique, that slow development under yeast.
There's also clearly a big move towards sustainability across France.
Oh, absolutely. Organic viticulture, vin biologique, is really growing significantly. That means no synthetic pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, or fertilizers in the vineyard. And there are rules about lower sulfite additions in the winery.
And biodynamics.
Biodynamics takes it a step further. It views the vineyard as a holistic living organism, part of the wider cosmos. It uses specific preparations, often timed with lunar cycles. It's complex, but proponents believe it leads to healthier soils and more expressive wines. The sources mention producers like Prieuré Roche and Domaine Trappet in Burgundy as well-known practitioners.
Why the shift?
It's partly a response to environmental concerns, climate change challenges, wanting healthier vineyards, and partly driven by consumers, demanding wines made with more ecological awareness.
Okay, now for arguably the most fun part, pairing these wines with food. The sources give some great specific examples that really make it tangible.
Yes, food and wine harmony is so central to French culture, isn't it? It's not just about the wine in isolation.
So what do they suggest?
Well, for a light, easy-drinking Cinsault, maybe from the south, think light grilled foods, seafood, Cabernet Franc from the Loire with its elegance and sometimes herbal notes, great with grilled meats, especially pork or chicken and anything with mushrooms,
Okay.
a classic, powerful Cabernet Sauvignon, like from Bordeaux, that calls for richer red meat, steak, lamb, or maybe some mature hard cheeses, Gamay from Beaujolais, with its bright fruit and acidity, perfect with French bistro classics like coq au vin or even lighter Italian or Brazilian dishes the sources mentioned. Those robust GSM blends from the southern Rhône. They're a natural match for Mediterranean flavors, grilled vegetables, herbs, lamb, stews, Sauvignon Blanc, especially from the Loire. Its acidity cuts beautifully through goat cheese. It's great with citrusy salads or even tricky vegetables like asparagus, that unique vin jaune from the Jura. Apparently it's amazing with creamy chicken dishes, Comté cheese from the same region, or even curries, and aromatic viognier. Suggested pairings included spicy Asian cuisine or richer fish dishes.
It really drives home that French wine isn't just about what's in the glass, but how it connects with the meal, with the local culture.
Exactly. And that ties into what the sources said about tourism, too.
Yeah.
Visiting these regions, tasting the wines at the source, often with the local food, it's becoming increasingly important for the economy of these areas and for preserving their unique cultural heritage.
So if we were to sum up this whole deep dive, based on the sources you shared, it's clear French wine isn't some static museum piece. It's this vast, incredibly vibrant landscape that's constantly balancing its amazing history with, well, new ideas, new challenges, new practices.
Absolutely. That influence of terroir, that connection to place, and the sheer diversity of grapes that remains fundamental. But it's the interplay between that sense of place and the human element, the traditions, the innovations, how producers respond to things like climate change, that really defines French wine today. It's dynamic.
Thinking about that interplay, especially this growing focus on sustainability we discussed across so many different regions.
It really does raise a fascinating question for you to consider, doesn't it? How does embracing these sustainable practices, nurturing the health of the vineyard, the whole ecosystem, how does that not only impact the final quality and the specific style of these French wines, but also maybe deepen our own connection to the unique places they come from?